Oh, where have we been? Oh. Ah! If you clicked on this video, then that means that you are currently curious as to the whereabouts of the Sinister Turmoil team over the course of the past 4 or 5 years or so. And in which case, we would like to give a short introduction for all of the members that will be available within this video, and we will be explaining our current roles in the project. I am the Sparky556. I have been the primary director of the project for a majority of its lifespan. And with me today, I have
Chabe. I am the main developer for Sinister Turmoil Sewers. I've pretty much from like animation to like programming, I've been doing a lot on this project over time.
And alongside us, we have
I'm Jolandic. I'm a complete newcomer to this thing. I am the co-director, writer, game designer for Sinister Turmoil Sewers. And that's about it. This is my first like major project that I've ever been a part of.
Everyone here is at least at a very large portion of development. We're both the idea people, and Acheb is the person who actually gets stuff done, who actually does things. The only person who has ever worked a day in their life on this project. And today we're going to be talking about the general history of the project, going from the release build that you last saw us on back in 2020 up until the current day of 2025, in which we are releasing this new remake. Now, if you've come to this video directly and still don't necessarily understand what the game is all about, then at a moment, we can explain that Sinister Turmoil Sewers is a portion of what was going to be Sinister Turmoil. The whole game has been deprecated over time, and we've made it into this free roam experience that you will be able to experience. It is developed using Unreal Engine. It is currently a decently long game, and I would describe it as more of a maze horror type of deal.
It's a lot more focused in on like stealth, but now it feels a little bit more like a complete experience. Like the actual gameplay, like from like what we've seen from playtesting, it usually is like around like 2 to 3 hours, just about.
Yeah, like I can say like with 100% certainty this is the same game. Like the 20 build and this new remake in 2025 are two completely different entities. So like the gameplay is different yet familiar. The story completely rewritten with completely different characters, and it's not like those like early, I don't know, 2015, 2016 like indie horror games when there's just no guidance or anything. We're a bit more merciful than some of those other ones.
We used to not be though. We have the old. Okay, whoever wants to have a little bit of fun, go back to GT Live and look up their playthrough of the game, and just no maps,
don't.
no nothing. No, it's sick. The original Sewers sucked ass, and I loved it. But we're gonna go back in time a little bit, back to our original, because as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to be creating something, you need to have an understanding of its history, its placement within the fandom that you're currently working within, as well as its impact that it had on its audiences, so that you know what you need to prioritize and what you could leave more so in the past. So, as you all know, at least I hope as you all know, Sinister Turmoil began as a mere glimmer in the eye of an up-and-coming game developer on GameJolt back in, I believe, somewhere around 2016, by the name of UHQ. UHQ Games, I only knew him as that. He made a little page, a little Unity project. It was fantastic, very nice, wonderful environments, all that.
That was a certainly interesting start for the project. Like, initially everyone was like on the bandwagon of like, oh, it's a multiplayer FNAF fan game, this is so cool, guys. And then like as UHQ started showing more stuff from it, customization, maps, and like some prototype like builds of like playing as, and I want to get people hooked. What I feel like people don't even notice, or at least like it's kind of unheard of, is that I feel like UHQ promised a bit too much without him realizing that almost like 80% of the stuff he promised he wasn't even capable of doing. So like it's all just kind of like promises that he wasn't able to really fulfill, and he just kind of like kept going on with it, hoping that eventually he might be able to do something like that. But well, obviously, I'll saw what happened with that.
And eventually, I decided, okay, I'll try and tip my hat into this, see if I can give out a little bit of assistance, which ended with a little bit of voice work, which then turned into a little bit more work, which then turned into co-directing it. And once UHQ managed to separate himself from the original project of Sinister Turmoil, I had taken on full responsibility over the title. And anything that would happen with the future of the project was entirely within my control, which is when we moved on to working with Angus Games, who is known for creating Five Nights at Freddy's fan games such as Lost and Found, the Unreal Engine 4 Sister Location remake, as well as his own personal indie film projects, which you should definitely check out. Even though he's not necessarily on the project anymore, check them out. Everything about them, check them out. They're all very nice. We had decided to create a whole new game for Sinister Turmoil. Entirely new story, entirely new basis, all of this. We took on the ideas of theming it around a theme park. We took on the ideas of characters that weren't necessarily haunted, but were more necessarily creations that were made for a specific purpose. And that purpose, I am still not going to tell anybody. It's been far too long of me being quiet about that, and I'm going to stay quiet about that until I want to talk about it. And once we have all that, we were planning on getting the game done. However, considering what Angus had previously worked on, the scale of his previous projects, we were under the assumption that what we wanted to do with Sinister Turmoil was just a little bit too big.
The Angus era, I feel like, was definitely like a step in the right direction. Going away from like pretty bland, I wouldn't really say bland, but kind of like pretty basic, a bit more safe environment with like an abandoned pizzeria to now an abandoned amusement park. It's definitely more interesting, and again, it's why I think it was a bit more of a step in the right direction, because I don't know, I just felt fatted by this amusement park setting. Yeah, kind of like it's kind of the same thing of like it's like history repeats itself, where it's like too much was promised, but none of it was fulfilled. Yeah, and I feel like even the same thing repeated with sewers, which I feel like funny thing about this whole thing is that each developer that worked on these versions of Sinister Turmoil were all 16. I like that's really funny. They like UHQ was 16, Angus was 16, and even Phil was 16 when he worked on sewers, which I think was like kind of funny, to say the least.
Yeah, I'd say like a big thing just in general is just the lack of experience when it comes to making games, and like having like a big vision for the game, and just like because they didn't have the skills yet built up to make something that big, it always fell eventually. Luckily Sewers is in a different spot, but it took years before we actually took an actual handle on what Sewers was going to end up being.
It was far too ambitious for what was possible at the time, and the shiny new prospects of game development had overtaken our minds to the point that we gave ourselves unrealistic expectations. That, combined with certain real-life situations that had sprung up during the course of development, meant that that initial version of Sinister Turmoil that had been shown to the public, that had all these models released, that had their environments teased and everything, had been shelved. But I didn't want everybody that had been waiting for a game for up to 5 years by now to leave empty-handed. So, the idea initially came about to create Sinister Turmoil's sewers. A vertical slice of gameplay of a specific section of the game that I had always envisioned, which was the sewers underneath Fredbear Funland, which would be used as a sort of fast travel hub that you could use to get from spot to spot far quicker than going above ground, but you would have to deal with, of course, the mangle underneath. And that little vertical slice decided to turn into its own little game, which, of course, you all got to play back in 2020.
But yeah, so Turmoil Sewers began development pretty much, at least it was conceptualized like a few weeks after the cancellation of the 2018 era.
Yeah. One of the biggest problems that at least I see now when it comes to the original version of Sewers was like the lack of planning that it had. I went all the way back up, scrolled all the way back up to the top of the Discord that we had for Sewers to see what was the start of it. And it was like very simple, like just bulletin points for like what we wanted. But we never really like went into the mechanics enough to really fully realize what Sewers was going to be. Like, I think a few of like Angus's initial like messages were just like, oh, you're just going to be searching around a map, finding like wrenches to turn off pumps, and then there'd be like, oh, maybe an enemy or two, like something like that. It was very broad, and I think that was the biggest problem. So like after we like got that, we talked a little bit about like what we wanted, like into a little bit more detail about Sewers, and I like started working on like Mangle's AI, but we never really like completely realized exactly what the game was supposed to be as we continued moving forward. Like I continued like thinking of like little like AI like systems that the like Mangle could do, but they're pretty like simple and we didn't plan it out completely. Like just in general, the biggest problem was just the planning. We should have went way harder into it. And that's why I think a lot of the problems sort of are created from this. So like past that, like getting all like the like very simple mechanics that we just like plopped in, we never really like play tested either. Like I made the AI and then we made the map, and then I think the only people that we really play tested with, at least like a little bit, was the developers, but they already knew how the game was going to play out, so it doesn't like really help with game design all that much. Oh, and like when we eventually like released the game, and like everything was like published, I think the biggest problem that players had when it came to like playing Sewers was the actual like guidance to push players to understand what they exactly had to do. Like people were able to figure it out eventually, but I've seen like so many like gameplay of like people playing Sewers and not knowing what everything did. Like 8-Bit Ryan, he played the game, and the like obviously the main goal for the game is to turn off all the pumps to then fill up the sewer so that you can escape after like your entrance was blown eventually at the like start of the game. But 8-Bit Ryan, when he played it, that was never really explained. Like there was like a little like I think a voice message right at the start of the game that just blew through everything. But that was so fast that people didn't really like understand everything that happened in that. So what happened is 8-Bit Ryan listened to that, and then he saw like one of the like mechanics that we had in the game that were like electrical like boxes that are broken down in the sewer that would like cause you to die from electricity if you like hit it. And 8-Bit Ryan thought that, oh, this was my goal. I need to turn off all these things, and then I'd be able to escape. And that so like there's just a lot of miscommunication there. So I would say that because we didn't play test enough, we weren't able to fix all those problems, because we would have 100% have seen those if that happened. Like there are like a few like AI like features and stuff that were eventually like cut out of that. That I don't even know how far along this mechanic ever got in, but like we wanted, at least there's like a pitched idea of like Mangle having like a hiding mechanic where she would sort of like she would hide behind a corner, sit there for like a long time waiting for you to go around that corner just to like go out and like scare you. Which is like in concept, like that's a fun idea, but I don't think it was like really, once again, we didn't really do any play testing, so I don't think we ever got through all that to see if that even worked. And it was just eventually cut. That sort of transitions well into my last little point here. That I was like, we already mentioned it a little bit. I was 16 when I made this. My other like project that I made before this was a game called Obsolete that was very simple.
Like, the whole thing of like, not playtesting enough really shows in the game, like lack of conveyance. Like, I mean, the writing was honestly dog shit. I don't know why it was so vague on like every single thing. Like the intro barely provided context. The dialogue that's meant to explain what you're supposed to do, incredibly vague as well. All it mentions is like an offhand remark of like, oh yeah, you're supposed to flood the sewer. How? And then like, just like everything just started crashing together, and that's pretty much it. That's why, well, in our eyes at least, well, in my, like, the original Sewers game, a complete failure, like just in game design and whatever. Oh, and story. For anyone that's confused about the story for that game, the story was nothing, honestly. The story was basically two criminals that broke into the park who were on the run away from the police, and now they're trapped. And that's it. That's the whole story.
Yeah, he's just exposed. He knows that we're out in public right now, so I'm not allowed to garrote him for saying such blasphemous things about my previous writing. But we had all this finished, and we finished up Sewers. We released it back in 2020. And personally, I don't hate it. I think it was a very nice learning experience. I believe that there is still a certain amount of value that can be found in that original project, especially in the areas that we could have improved on it, which is something that we felt very quickly after the initial game released. So we decided, okay, the game came out. We released a little update to include a cameo from another character that chat may be aware of. And after we were done with this, we had decided, okay, we made this project, we have released it to the public, we've made good on our promise. However, we're still not 100% satisfied with the product that we have brought out to the public. So we decided we will overhaul. We'll make an update in possibly a year's time, was our initial framework, which, tough shit. That didn't happen. But we had the idea, we were going to make this project, and we were going to expand on certain elements that people that had picked up the game when it had come out had commented on were possibly lacking, including, as previously mentioned, the story aspects, as well as some lackluster gameplay elements, and possibly something to do with our map design philosophy, in the sense that the map that we had at the time of the initial game's release was very samey. It was very much a series of connected tunnels that you could kind of tell apart. So we went through quite a few different iterations of this rework, and it came with a lot of mechanics that we were playing around with, some of which you're going to be hearing about later on. But during the process of us attempting to create a better game, we sort of lost the idea of what we wanted to do. The initial consensus and the initial conceit for Sinister, Turmoil, Sewers was the idea of this game isn't going to get made. This full game that we wanted to make is currently not feasible for the team that we have. So we will be making a vertical slice. We will be putting out all of this. And one thing I very specifically remember that I wanted the game to be is that I didn't want it to be very story heavy. I wanted the game to almost feel like a Goosebumps novel in a sense, where it's its own little singular story. It's got its own little thing going on in its own little world. And then once you stop looking at it, it sort of stops existing. Like, it's not canon if I were ever to proceed with it. However, the thoughts behind that process slowly began to alter over the course of development until eventually we are left with the Sinister Turmoil that we will be getting soon, which, as you will be seeing, is going to be far more focused on a narrative aspect, as well as possible expansion. And we will be seeing about that at some other point. However, that's not the only thing that was a very difficult point of contention when it came to updating the project, because a lot of our team, and by a lot of our team, I mean the only guy who actually does things, was predisposed for a big portion of development. So I will hand the mic over, and he can discuss all of the much cooler things that he got to do during the time that he was away from sewers.
Yeah, so yeah, as they said, as sewers was being worked on, we definitely we lost we didn't really know exactly what sewers was going to be. And during those years, as we were trying to figure it out, but we were kind of blind in the dark, trying to figure out what is the sewers we're talking about. But at the same time as that's been going on, I wasn't just working on sewers anymore. I started getting a few different opportunities that came up to me. The most major one is Poppy Playtime. I started working on sewers and Poppy Playtime, which was about it was sort of a part-time position. So 4 hours every day. And then at some point, it switched to, I eventually got the opportunity to work for a YouTuber, AFMAO, because they were wanting to do animation stuff. And I've been doing that for a while. So I was doing part-time Poppy, part-time AFMAO, and I am also working on the side sewers. And then that changed, and Poppy Playtime kind of exploded and became ginormous. So then I eventually became full-time Poppy, but I didn't want to leave AFMAO stuff behind because I really liked working on AFMAO stuff. It was fun. So I was working full-time Poppy, part-time AFMAO, and working on sewers on the side too. So sewers was very much slowed down during these times. I don't even know how little I worked on sewers. I worked on it I don't know what Sparky, what was your perspective a little bit on how development was going as I started working on these other things at the same time?
While you were sort of disposed on other things, I felt like there was, because again, he's the only guy who does anything cool. So we sort of had this project file, and we're like, okay, we'll take this time. You're gonna go off, do your own thing for a bit. That'll be nice, and then we'll get the opportunity to sort of rein ourselves in, get a more consistent and focused view, and then we're going to try and figure that out. And then we did do that, and then wait a little bit longer, then wait a little bit longer, and then we wait a little bit longer, and then you had enough free time to be able to continue working, which is fine. I saw a lot of your other stuff, and it was really good, and I was like, damn. We're so fucking lucky that we picked him off of Lost and Found. We're so fortunate that we found someone off of that.
Yeah, so after Poppy, I eventually through working on Poppy, I definitely think that helped me a lot when like understanding how to make games, because I was like actually like in a office working with other people doing game stuff, and I could see it firsthand on how they sort of handle it. Obviously every like studio has like its own way of doing games, but I can see how like flawed we handled like the original sewers back then and all that. So then eventually for like I eventually left Poppy Playtime after Chapter 4 came out. Well, not after. I left like I think maybe a couple weeks before Chapter 4 came out of Poppy. So I'm no longer working there, and I am now full-time Ackmouse stuff, and now and sewers. So I'm only working on these two projects now. But yeah, after like all of that happened, I guess we can probably start. I guess we could see Dan, since you joined around this time.
Yeah, so I joined late 2023, in I think October. I was in the talks with it. I was friends with Achebe, I think for about 2 years. I knew him from like obsolete stuff. I think we like met in the obsolete server. Then we started talking to one another, and then just kind of transpired from there. We became a bit close, and then I was in the talks with him about at least playtesting sewers, and he was yeah, sure, that'd be nice. And then like I finally got to test the build in October of 23. So again, late 2023, the early 2023 release date year, that whole shebang. Yeah, I'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, so I got to test that. So I was initially just like a lead tester for the game, and then later on I was promoted to being a writer, which that stems back to like, oh boy, I don't know if I ever want to talk about this, but I guess I'll try to. There was a specific time when it was Sparky, the game's previous composer, Rain R4D. We kind of got together. We brought in the idea of, like, after Sewers, to basically make Sinister Turmoil into its own standalone game. And this was very brief, and like I think like just kind of just like messing around with that idea. But then later on, I don't know if it was, but I don't know if it was Sparky who lost interest in that. But we dropped the idea. And honestly, looking back at it, that's a very bad idea, because despite how different Sinister Turmoil is from just like a FNAF game, it still is connected to FNAF in one way. And so just ripping that aspect off, you're basically left with just like an empty shell. And at that point, you're just better off making a whole new game. That's me. But that's basically kind of like, because I was in talks with Sparky and kind of wanted to write the story, that I was brought to write Sewers. And when I got to write Sewers, and I was asking around for like, okay, so what's the story? I was met with basically a blank stare, like essentially because again the game had no story back then. It was just that. Like what I said, with like two criminals being Warren and Jamie, in case anyone's confused. It was just that. Originally I was gonna take that and just kind of try and expand on it, but I realized kind of a shit concept, to be honest. So I was just kind of like going through this trial and error phase of just trying to figure out what's the best direction we could take the story. And not to be harsh on the man, but communicating with Sparky during that time was very difficult.
Correct.
A lot of the time, like, it was very difficult. He would sometimes even withhold information from me, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And it just made things much more difficult to work on. And writing the story for that took like multiple months, almost close to a year, I'd say, to just like finally figure it out. And like even before that, there was a time when Sparky was just completely burnt out from like even thinking about sewers. So he like wanted someone to basically assist on the direction role, and he somehow had trust in me. Like I think he like noticed that like, oh, I knew what I was doing, so you know he kind of put me in that place. So I was like, okay, sure. And that's when I was promoted to being what I am now, the co-director. And this is when a lot more involvement, had a lot more control over the story, which just made things a lot easier. And again, quote keyword being easier. It wasn't quite easy. It was still incredibly difficult, and brought me a lot of physical turmoil, to be honest. So, and I'm trying to think like what happened after that. You know, there's one guy who I know was the biggest pain, but I'm forgetting his name. I'm forgetting what that guy was, who was causing the whole team so much like legit turmoil, like not just to me but to everyone else. It was.
Yeah, I think I feel like I remember that. Wasn't he on like the game page at one point or something? Wasn't he?
Yeah.
I feel like I remember seeing a. Did I see a silhouette over there sometime? I'm not 100% sure, but before we head into that, we do need to head into a few of the smaller game mechanics so that we can really ice that. We want to butter everybody up. We want to get people started on the smaller stuff. Like Hammy. Hammy's dead. I killed Hammy. Hammy sucks. I fucking hate Hammy. You remember you hit enter and then you heard the Star Spangled Banner coming out of a fucking rodent, and then he came out and Mangle just ran toward him for like an hour. And it was the worst shit ever, and I didn't like it, and nobody liked it. So he's dead now. He's canonically dead. You're gonna find his corpse at some point. Yeah. Maybe not in this game, maybe some other time, but you will find his corpse, and he's gonna be dead. And there was also...
you know, before we get into the other stuff, you know, Amy was such a bizarre idea. I believe what Achebe told me is that I think he realized, like, this stems way back to like the legacy build of the game, the 2020 version. He like said to me like, oh, I felt like the game was too difficult, and I feel like the players die a lot. So what he essentially did is he added a get out of jail free card mechanic, which
pretty much
honestly broke things more than actually aided the game. Because if you were clever on how you could use the 3 uses of the hamster, you could just speedrun the game in like 2.5 minutes, pretty much. And you know, just like a no-go. And you know, very early on in development, Annie got the axe. You know, we lay down his head, and you know, and then we just chopped his head off.
We took him out into the back. He looked at the flowers. We put a few rounds in the back of his head, and he is currently off on a wonderful farm, talking with all of the other game mechanics that sucked ass, including our map, which isn't on here, but I just remembered that we had a map that you would pull out. This was in the original game. You would pull out a map, and you would fill it out on your own. I liked that idea, but it just wasn't panning out for the type of project they were making, so that's gone. That's gone forever. Nobody's gonna use that map. Maybe another time, but not here. But don't put the map in now. Don't type it in. It's already done. I've already gotten past it. We don't need this anymore.
World, come on, we gotta talk about the world's useless map.
No, what else is there to talk about? It's just you walk forward and you draw a line, and I think that can work, but not for the type of game that Stewards is. Yeah. So get that out of the fucking document. We're not talking about this anymore.
Yeah, I do just want to say that, like, I think this idea for a map would only work for a game if it was like longer. Like Sewers was only supposed to be like a 30-minute game, but if it was like a game that was like multiple hours, you would have drawn out the whole map eventually.
Exactly.
Because you would have played the game for a long time, but that's not what this was. So it just wasn't useful.
No, it wasn't. And moving on from that piece of crap mechanic, move into another useless mechanic that no one used: a spray paint.
I do want to say this like the spray paint mechanic was specifically for the newer version of sewers, not the older one. Like this mechanic was supposed to be like, oh, like since we wanted, at least in the newer version of sewers, to have like a much even bigger map, like which like I don't even know how we like ended up doing that, but it just ended up happening. So we were like, oh, I think it would be fun because we want like the spray paint mechanic can be used to like mark your places as you're like going through the map, but it ended up that like just so like you wouldn't get lost, but it ended up that players like we actually started playtesting like the newer version of sewers after we like realized that mistake, and we've noticed that nobody like we established the spray paint at the start of the game, but then like people used it once and maybe a couple times, and then they never used it ever again throughout the whole time that they played the newer version of sewers. So we were like kind of just like it's not really useful. It's just like people didn't really want to use it, so we just ended up cutting that. And
Pretty
that
much
was
like
fun. Mhm.
people mostly use it to draw dicks on walls, to be honest.
And that's good. I like that. What we had basically, again, this goes down a lot to the lack of communication on where you're supposed to go, the lack of direction, and how samey the old map used to feel made the spray paint can more of a necessity in terms of gameplay. Because how it would work is that you would spray walls, hitting a specific key, you would be able to spray whatever you want, you could draw dicks, you could draw whatever, and those sprays would stay. No matter what. If you died, if you started a new game, if you did any of that, all your paints would save. So if you put any arrows indicating pump this way or anything that way, then it would always be there and you would always be able to check it. What I imagined it would end up allowing people to do is that I was hoping that it would allow people to sort of speedrun the game a little bit more efficiently whenever they got around to that point, because at this point during development, I had wanted the game to be more of a sandbox that people could time themselves going through. So we would introduce a few mechanics that are making it into the main game that more facilitated the idea of you're in this area, you have a bunch of stuff you can play with and a bunch of different tools, and you figure out how you get out of there, and you can do it fast, you can do it slow, you can do it however you want, just to facilitate other people's type of gameplay. Here we have written new rushing water that will push you as you stood on it, but I'm actually not 100% sure what that is, so I need someone to fill in for me on that. I'm not sure.
So this one's more like
This one was a bit more minor. Basically, in one of the areas of the map, there will be rushing water that you have to walk on, and basically it was just like slowly you. And initially, it just didn't do anything. It was more of like a nuisance to the player. I was just slowing them down. But eventually, like we wanted the idea of you being able to basically being able to push you off the edge, kill you. So that didn't make it in, because I talked with Ochebe about this, and we realized that the rushing water really didn't do anything. It just slows the game down, like, unnecessarily. It doesn't do anything. So, it ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
Hold on. No, I'm really like, I don't know, the back of my head, it's just, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Was there not another?
like another mechanic?
There was one more. I feel like there was one more like really big mechanic that we had in the game, and I just can't put my finger on it. What was it? It was
Come on, bear in mind.
Bear in mind.
Fazbear? Like a Fazbear, maybe?
Maybe,
oh fuck! We forgot Freddy. We forgot Freddy. He's in the sewers today. He's been in the sewers for like fucking 4 years. Oh fuck!
So for anyone who looked at that very old gameplay teaser and thought, "Oh, that's Sinister Freddy," you're right.
You're right. It was, and we wanted him in so badly. But we didn't understand initially that the game just was never made for more than one enemy. However, before we learned that very important lesson on scope and on vision, we went through, count it with me, possibly up to 3 different iterations of getting Freddy in the game. So
I know 2 of them. I can't remember the original one. I can't remember.
the original one and the second one were very similar, I'm fairly certain, because it was basically, all right, we have distraction items in the game, throwable bottles, all that shit, and people didn't often use them against our Mangle. So we decided, okay, let's have an enemy that's more based around sound. And the first character that came to mind was, oh, okay, we have the Sinister characters. Let's do throw a dart at a board Freddy. Why not? And we decided to put him in. We tested him out very slightly to be a blind character.
So, this is Dan from the future, and I'm here to say that this iteration of Freddy actually never existed. That's not true. There were only 2 versions, and so
So we looked at the design. We took a look at him. We took a look at his big claws, his big gauntlets, his big telescopic blades. Thanks for that, Angus. Those were sick as hell. And we said, okay, how about we give him the ability to sort of plunge those blades into pre-designated hole sockets that he can use to see through wires. That's actually what we said was gonna happen, is that he can see through wires, which I'm not sure how the hell that worked. I thought it was gonna be like, oh, there's cameras attached to the wires and then he sees through those cameras. No, he sees through electricity, I guess, but that's not something that happens anymore. And to facilitate this brand new video game edition, we created a whole new section of the sewers. Whole new section where Freddy would be his own enemy, and he's sort of sectioned off from the rest of the game until you get near the end, in which he gets integrated into the main sewer system. And in this place, we have quite possibly the saddest piece of cut content from this game. The saddest piece of content that we've cut. And that is the introduction cutscene for Freddy, which I love to this day. It is a beautiful fucking piece of cinema. And the fact that we can't use it anymore is the most heartbreaking thing in the universe.
That's so cool.
It's
Look,
so cool.
He stuck his blade in that thing, and then the electricity
He
came down.
He stuck it in.
Look at the lighting. Whoa, it's so red.
The lighting is so red. It's fucking sick.
Yeah.
But, I would say. Oh, you can go ahead.
I was gonna say this was the most finished, I'd say, version of Freddy that was ever created. He's the one that lasted the longest. He had the most ability to be introduced into the game, but we were running into the issue where we did not believe the game was created initially to sustain more than a single enemy in a single environment. So we decided, okay, if we can't make this work, let's try and make him a little bit more unique. And that made us go into Freddy version 3, and he's a submarine now. I know, he's a submarine now.
Okay, so this was Bleach shot in the dark. Achebe came to me one day out of nowhere saying, hey, I don't think Freddy really works. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, he kind of sucks, doesn't he? So we came together and we're like, okay, let's give it one more try. Let's try and make this work. And so And the best way I can describe this version of Freddy is the epitome of throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks. So, Achebe had this idea of like I think like a shark in the water motif.
Yeah.
We basically went off from there. So, like, the way he would have worked is he would, Sparky already said it, he'd be a underwater enemy, and you would only be able to see the top of his hat, the top hat, and I remember back then we thought it looked so cool. Honestly, looking back at it now, it looks so fucking stupid. It's so silly.
It's a floating hat. It's cool. Shut up. It's cool. You're a fucking stickler. It's still cool. I don't care.
I think
Okay.
when it comes to like that version of Freddy, it was very much like, oh yeah, we like just like from the start we wanted there to be another enemy form for this like major update for sewers. So then like we like wanted to try to keep him in as much as we want. We tried so hard to, and a bunch of different like things as we said. But then yeah, as we got to like this version as the last try for Freddy, like yeah, as like Dan said about like the water enemy, like the way that this like the overall like AI would work is that he would be like the one stalking in like the water, and if you like went under like in like water that's like deep enough, he'd like spawn in and he'd like slowly try to like go over towards you as you like trudged through the water, and you had to quickly like go in and out. And he would like very much react to like any like ripples that go throughout water. And like if you like agitated him enough, he'd eventually like stand up out from the water. And in the end of like doing all that, we tried it out with like a full on like just separate build to see if like this just on its own works out. But then it just didn't. Like we ended up just completely cutting out Freddy from the game. Because we just realized that we can't have two big enemies that actually could kill you in the game. We realized that Mangle is 100% the main like focus where all the fun is in this game. And like over the course of these like multiple years, Mangle's AI has like slowly but surely gotten like better and better and better as I like learned how to actually make good AI that feels like very fun to go against. So like as that like happened, we just eventually just completely got rid of Freddy. He's completely dead. He's with Hammy now. He's sitting
Hell
there
no, Hammy's in hell. Hammy's in hell. Hammy didn't have nearly as much cool shit. Hammy's in hell burning. All you Hammy fans in the server, I hate you. All right, but we did legitimately.
He get burned in hell for all I care.
He went shut up. He went to a farm, but actually, we say Hammy went to a farm. Hammy's in hell. Freddy actually went to a farm, and he's grazing with all of the other with like the Amnesia Water Monster and I believe Specimen 13 from Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, and they're all just hanging out in a big pond of water on a farm. But after that was cut, we said, okay, one enemy, one consistent, focused, personal through line. And what we decided to do is we decided to go back a little bit to the drawing board, take what we have, and play to the strengths that we already had instead of trying to innovate in spots where they were unnecessary, such as adding new enemies. Which brings us modern, new iteration of sewers that you all got to initially see through the teaser trailer that we released earlier in, I believe, whenever we released this, it will have probably been last month. And it is, the reception that we've gotten so far on that specific trailer has been wonderful. We have gotten such a amazing reception from everybody on how the game is improved, on how people are receiving the Mangle remodel, on how people are receiving the brand new environment design, and people are going to love all of the new things that we haven't shown you yet and are very specifically trying to avoid talking about on here, such as a new design for a few tertiary characters that we possibly have hanging out in that sewer with you, like possibly a I don't know, something with a few wheels, maybe a seeking eye, maybe a bit of a loudmouth. But they're in there. They have a design. They're modeled. They look amazing. They look incredible. Our new modeler is fucking fantastic. I love that guy. And
you know, going to this version, this is when I guess you could say we locked in. This is when we're like, okay, we know what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So
we know
this is gonna be a first-person adult horror game about avoiding this very intelligent enemy through the sewer environment, and you know, you're gonna be doing the same thing. You're gonna be flooding the sewer, and then after that just need to escape. But to make that that still feels a bit sort of, I don't know, empty for me. So this is also when the story was really coming together, and when like we finally figured out what we wanted to do. Also, I'm obviously not gonna say anything about the story now. I can say that it will explain a lot of things that people are confused about, such as they are not trapped inside a park because the animatronics went haywire. And just general context for a lot of different things that I'm just very looking forward for you guys to see. Again, there's very little I can really talk about this because a lot of things are very spoiler worthy. So y'all are just gonna have to wait and see.
You could say a really long sentence, and then in post we can censor it, and then whether or not, and then no one will know if it was actually a spoiler or not, but it will just be a big long bleep that we can just put in there. So I could say things like, "Oh yeah, there's a," and nobody heard any of that, and no one is gonna. Please, dear God, whoever's editing this, please fucking bleep that. Dear God, if this comes out,
after all that, I'm sure a lot of you've probably been thinking to yourself, okay, so we have sewers, we have the sewers remake. Yes, we dropped an update title because this is a whole new game at this point. So what's after this? What's after sewers? Like, are we just gonna be done? Is like Sinister Turmoil just gonna be left in perpetual limbo?
Well, I don't want to make any promises, and I don't want to say anything that could possibly get us into another 8-year-long development cycle. However, I'm not saying there isn't a way that it'll happen. There is definitely a world that we could live in where we get more. However, that will depend on a few factors, including how well this does. So, if anyone in here wants to see the world of Sinister Turmoil expand in the future, because there's room for it to expand, we are, even with the amount of story that we're packing into sewers, there is still a whole world out there that you won't know about. Then please download the game when it releases, whenever we decide to release it.
You heard him. After all that, after like we've talked about, I don't even know for how long. So like, what can we say after all this? What have we learned from all of this?
What have we learned? Our lesson is what we've learned. We have learned to be more consistent with our vision. We have learned to give proper guidance to players on their experiences. We have learned quite possibly everything that you shouldn't do when attempting to breathe new life into something that you've already created. And if you've learned everything that you shouldn't do, that means the only thing left to learn is what you should do. And I like to think that we're firmly on that trail now.
I definitely agree.
I agree.
On my side, like seeing everything that like went on throughout sewers, like just having like a correct like vision and stuff, like in how sewers was supposed to be was like that was the biggest problem, is that we never really like figured out the tone and everything that we wanted from it. It was very much just like throwing things on the wall and see what sticks kind of like mentality. um and as we've like gotten closer and closer to like now what we have, we like are completely like we understand what the like what we're going for with sewers now, and I'm very excited for everyone to like play this game. And I'm sure that like this like new version of sewers isn't going to be perfect. Like no game is going to be, and but I'm very excited to like continue to see what people say about this newer version. I know that it is like I could safely say that it's like 10 times better than like the earlier version, probably even more than that. But I'm sure that there's like even more lessons that we can continue to learn from all of this, especially once it's all out. But I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
I am too. I've learned like throughout all of this, I learned about writing. I learned a lot about game design, direction, even and directing people. And honestly, I could say I don't regret a single thing. Like I'm happy how things have turned out, and I'm just super excited for people to finally see what we've been working on for like 5 years now.
And now, with all of that said, we hope that you enjoy this video game that took a little bit too long to make, but we hope will be worth it, and all the stuff that we are going to be showing off in the future. So if anyone has any closing words that they would like to say, then please, by all means, stage is yours. Go ahead. Nothing? All right, fine. See ya. See you later. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.